Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. We're going to talk with Yaron Brook a little bit about Portland and Antifa and everything along the way. But I want to ask you to think before we even begin here about if the President of the United States set the taxes at 95% for the upper income brackets and locked 1.5 million immigrants or their immediate descendants, or immigrants and their immediate descendants, in camps, would you put your life on the line to fight for a country, to fight to defend a country that had 95% tax rates and had a 1.5 million immigrants locked up? Because that was the situation in World War II. At the beginning of World War II, we had 95% tax rates on highest income brackets. That's why we had the Depression, as a matter of fact. It was not an economic disaster, it was government-imposed poverty. That's what the Depression was. Okay. Were our fathers and grandfathers right to defend that nation? And are we right today to defend that nation? Is the United States worth defending today? Was it worth defending in World War II? Or is it a bunch of garbage because some of the leaders are not to our liking? You see? How objective can we be about this? Alright. Now, Yaron Brook's got some things to say, and let's just start at the beginning. I don't know if we necessarily need to do the whole thing. In fact, his comments only go to the 7-minute mark or so.
Role of the federal government in a situation like what is going on in Portland. Open insurrection and government allied with the insurrection. Well, let's not, let's not exaggerate here.
Now, I think that that's not too much of an exaggeration. Those of you who aren't familiar with the Evergreen College scandal should look into that. The police were told to stand down. You can actually get audio on YouTube of the conversation between the 911 call and the police dispatch, and she said, "We've been told not to send in officers." Why? Because the college president's told us not to. Why is he telling us that? You know, spooky, strange, bizarre stuff. Now, I've said before that what they're trying to do is let the left cause so much havoc that somebody goes in there and tries to answer them in the absence of the police. You know, Yaron Brook later in this video says that they're assembling in some park. Just don't go to that park. They're not doing that, Yaron. They're taking down downtown Portland over. They're directing traffic. They're beating up passers-by, who happen to be passing by. They're not, like an old man passing by, and they beat the crap out of him. Why? Because they can. They're showing how powerful they are. And the police won't do anything lest it incite violence. Now, this is ultimately on the shoulders of the elected officials. But I'm just saying that what they're trying to do is get an answer from the other side. They're trying to raise so much hell and havoc that somebody goes in there to answer them. Then they'll say, look at this trouble that's happening. These rightists, these far right wingers have come in and raised all this hell. Right? The government's not answering the left, Yaron. The government's only going to answer when the right goes in there. Who is the right? Anybody who goes in there to answer Antifa will be labeled white supremacist right-wingers. Nazi right-wing white supremacists. They'll label them that, won't they? They'll label them racist, and they'll really push down hard on the right. Are they going to push down hard on Antifa? No, or they would have done it by now. You think that they're going to, once it reaches a fevered pitch, then the state will come in and clamp down on both sides? No, they're only going to clamp down on the right. Antifa is going to grow and become more powerful. Okay, there. Now you have my predictions about that. Okay, so back to Yaron.
I don't think the federal government has much to say in what is going on in Portland. This is primarily in terms of police. This is the job
He's right. This is a local issue, and this is why the Second Amendment is important.
of the local police and Oregon state government and state police.
And if the local police aren't doing their job, who do you call? Right? You can only go to your closet and get your gun. That's all you can do. Or your safe, or wherever you keep your gun. Or have your gun on your sidearm. Some people carry their gun. That's the only option you have when the local police won't even protect you. That's why the Second Amendment is important, because sometimes,
To keep the peace. And of course, the problem is that we have a theory of free speech that says that anybody who wants to march should be granted a permit to march, even if they're obstructing people's nice Saturday afternoon stroll in the park. Now,
I don't think the problem here is the theory of free speech and the ability to peaceably assemble. That's what we have, is we have the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of our grievances. That's the right that we have. We do not have a right to violate property rights, to interrupt the flow of traffic, to put people's lives at risk by blocking ambulances or roadways, to cost people money by blocking them from getting to their job through public thoroughfares. We don't have those rights. So Antifa is not an example of a problem with this bizarre right to freedom of speech that we have to assemble. The problem is that they aren't enforcing the law. That's the problem. So, not that, I mean, he's just answering off the cuff. This isn't a serious criticism of his position. I'm sure that he would see what I'm saying, right?
I don't believe that. I don't believe you have a right to assemble. Particularly, you have a right to assemble on your property. You have a right to rent a hall and do an event. You might have a right to rent a space and even in outdoors and do an event. You don't have a right to just march down the street, block traffic, and interfere with everybody else. I don't care if you're...
But all of those things he listed at first don't really fit what I was saying, the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of your grievances. It's the right to peaceably assemble that we're really getting at here. What does it mean to peaceably assemble? What does it mean to assemble in a way that's peaceful, right? If they're violating that, then they are violating the law, right? Now, maybe we could send it to the courts and say, how are we going to get people together unless we can get together in a public space? And then the court says, okay, well, if you get a permit from the city, then you can block off whole streets. And that's the situation we're in. If you get a permit from the city, you can have a march. Now, if the city won't give you such a permit, that's a violation of your right to peaceably assemble. So we've reached this compromise in our court system. That's the situation we have. But the problem with Antifa doesn't have anything to do with that. Okay? People peaceably assemble and they clean up after themselves. Unless they're leftists, they usually leave a big mess. This happens in cities all across America all the time. The problem is violence. It's initiation of force. And the fact that the local police won't answer this initiation of force because they're afraid of inciting violence. They're afraid of more violence occurring if they try to stop the violence that's occurring from occurring. How stupid is that? I think that it's they're just a false narrative trying to get an answer from the right so they can clamp down seriously on what they call the right and have some sort of sick new laws. That's what I think's going on.
on the right, on the left, in the middle, or anything. You don't have a right to disrupt the lives of people who are not interested in what you're doing. Now, Portland and Oregon have an obligation as a government to protect innocent people from violence. Now, the violence here is from two sources. It's from a variety of different racist groups, white nationalist groups.
See, that's how I know that he's just picking up garbage off of the TV. That's just garbage, Yaron. There may be white supremacists and racists, but the right has black people and Mexicans and Koreans. So that's just a total leftist fake news garbage narrative. That is just garbage.
and Antifa. And this has been going on.
So there are two sources for violence: the people who are initiating force and these supposed racists. Where are these racists? Where are they causing the trouble? The only source of trouble is Antifa. So I just leave that to the fair-mindedness of the audience. Yaron Brook is here saying that the right is a source of trouble. You guys can go watch the videos for yourselves. Antifa is the problem.
Portland for well over a year, and it is not just one-sided, although Antifa gets a pass, and the white nationalists always get accused of everything. But
it's not one-sided then? In what way is it not one-sided? It is one-sided. Antifa can do anything they want. And anybody who's on the right, since they're racist, there might be violence, so we have to oh, please. Okay, so we have to be able to think for ourselves. We can't just buy into the leftist narrative off of CNN. Come on.
Both parties are to blame, and both parties need to be stopped. And
what is the right doing that they need to be stopped from doing? Getting mad that Antifa is directing traffic and beating up passers-by? The right needs to be stopped from answering Antifa's violence. That's bizarre. It's just bizarre.
Both parties need to be put in jail. Both sides.
If Antifa were put in jail for what they were doing, there would not be anyone marching on the other side.
Of this need to be put in jail. And it's a travesty that the police are not doing their job.
That's the real travesty. Antifa arises because the police aren't doing their job. That's the whole narrative. There's no right-wing conspiracy. There's no right-wing fascist. There's no right-wing racist. There's no white supremacists. There's no white nationalists. There are only thugs and the police failing to do their job, and then there's everybody answering them.
On the other hand, it's a travesty that these marches are going on in the first place. I mean, again, you want to have a Proud Boys rally? Rent a hall. I'm with my family in the park. Suddenly you have to show up, and everybody opposes you have to show up, and everybody's yelling.
Well, no, not suddenly you show up, right? If you're going to do a big get-together, you do have to have some sort of a public license for it. Like, you have a right to peaceably assemble, but everybody else has a right to have a day in the park. And so we've come to a sort of legal compromise on this, where you can peaceably assemble. You just have to tell us where and when and how many people are going to be there. And you have to get it approved through the City Hall. If City Hall won't approve it, then they're subjecting themselves to a nice little lawsuit, aren't they? And so we've gone over this and over this in our legal system. So that's a mischaracterization to say suddenly the Proud Boys show up. Now, if they do, what trouble are they going to cause? Who's going around beating people up and directing traffic? It's not the Proud Boys. That's a mischaracterization for him to say suddenly the Proud Boys or the Patriots or something show up. But who does he say the Proud Boys?
I'm with my family in the park. Suddenly you have to show up, and everybody opposes you have to show up, and everybody's yelling and everybody's screaming.
Oh, okay. He didn't say the Proud Boys or anybody like that. Suddenly, a bunch of people show up. Now, if you're saying a mob has assembled and there's a riot, then the police should come, for sure. But we ought to be able to peaceably assemble. That's what the whole discussion is, right? Violence. And where's the violence coming from? Antifa.
Another, and maybe violence erupts. Get a break. Rent a room, as they say, right? Don't bring your don't bring your confrontation and violence into my park.
Where's the violence coming from? I just leave it with the fair-mindedness of the audience. Where is the violence coming from? Is it the fact that people are showing up who are upset about no cops being on the scene and thugs beating up innocent passers-by? Are those the source of the violence?
So I am not an advocate of all of these marches and all of these publicly staged events. I think in these cases, both sides represent real evil. I don't think there's anybody there except the innocent bystanders who happen to get caught up in it who is innocent.
Both sides represent real evil. Now, This type of floating platonic rationalism wouldn't work in World War II when you said the Republicans, the Democrats, both sides represent real evil. Well, which side are you on? Are you with the communists and the Nazis? Or are you with the free world? Which side are you on? Both sides represent evil. Come on, we live in this world. Let's be objectivists in this world. Antifa is going around beating up innocent people. Some other group comes and says, why aren't the police here? We're not going to let Antifa direct traffic. We're going to let cars go on their way. We're going to stop Antifa from stopping cars. That's a failure of the police. That's a failure of the police to stop Antifa. Now, it's a travesty, it's a disaster, but they're not equally bad. The thugs and the people trying to stop the thugs are not equally bad. I just leave that with the audience. What do you think? Do you think they're equally bad?
I think one is provoking and would love to start the violence. The other is there to be violent. And
the right aren't there to be violent. They are there to answer the fact that innocent people are being beaten up and that the law won't do anything about it.
And would love to provoke, and they're both.
And would love to provoke. The right would love to provoke. That's who he means. I'm certain by his grammar that that's who he means. The right would love to provoke. No, the right would love it if the police would get involved. The right want the police to be involved. The left want to provoke.
Basically equally evil. I don't see good guys any more than I saw good guys in Charlottesville.
See, you're gonna link it to racism. Anytime anybody opposes the left, they're racist. So they're the same as Charlottesville?
Everybody was a bad guy in Charlottesville. It's not like there were what was Trump's statement? There's some good people there. There were no good people there.
Yeah, that was Trump's attempt to befriend any sort of racist wing of the right party. The racist wing of the right party is where? They're old Democrats. They're old school Democrats in the South. That's the only racists in the right party, is Democrats from the South. Old school Democrats. Racists.
I'm sorry, nobody counts as a good person who stays, and on both sides. Now, there might have been good people marching against the white supremacists, but there were no.
All right, so do I think that they're good people down there? The right, the Proud Boys who go down there, are they good people? If you live locally and people are getting beat up, are you a good person to go try to stop it? I think it's a shit show. And I think that this is what happens when the government doesn't enforce laws. Virtual anarchy. So now to pick out the good and the bad people is bizarre. But to say that the people initiating force are no worse than the people who are trying to stop that is just insane, Yaron. It's just insane. Some people are initiating force, that's Antifa, and some people are upset about this. That's the Proud Boys, the Patriots. Come on. This is as plain as day. It's as plain as the nose on your face.
There were no good people on the white supremacist or white nationalist side.
This is just CNN garbage. White supremacists, white nationalists. That's CNN garbage. They're not white supremacists and white nationalists. They are free-thinking patriots.
If you're at a
No, not all of them. Not all of them.
rally, and you think you're there for good reason, even though it was organized by white nationalists, so why are you going to begin with? But let's say you accidentally, you didn't realize, you didn't read the poster, and you don't.
What's wrong with white nationalists? People who have white skin and believe in their nation. What's wrong with those people?
Didn't notice who was sponsoring the rally. And then suddenly you start hearing chants from the people who are organizing the rally, who are the centerpiece of the rally. Blood and soil, and Jews will not replace us.
Oh, is there anti-Judaism in the movement? Well, there had better be Jews in the movement. The only hope they have is to get into that movement and be part of it. So now, I'm not on the far right, whatever anybody thinks it is. I'm an objectivist. But I can tell the difference between Antifa and people who don't like Antifa. Come on.
Either take a side against them or you walk away. But if you stay, you're not a good person. You're not a good person. Anybody who stays in a rally with a bunch of white nationalists, any more than leftists who stay in a rally with a bunch of Antifa people who are making those kind of statements, is not a good person.
So it's only bad people that are trying to stop Antifa. Well, I just disagree hands down with that. I believe there are good people who want Antifa to stop doing what it's doing.
So, but the national government has no role to play there unless this turns into, kind of an internal civil war. It's not. It's not any. I mean, indeed, it's less. It's less disruptive to the lives of Portlandians than violence in Chicago. It's two gangs, just like gangs in Chicago, going up against each other every Saturday in a park somewhere, and the local government is not doing anything about it. The people who
See, that's the mischaracterization. It's not in a park somewhere. They're taking over the downtown streets. So he's got to make his case. He's got to mischaracterize what is happening. Then he's got to equate the good guys and the bad guys, the ones initiating force and the ones who are upset about the initiation of force. That's how he makes his case. Pretty weak, Yaron. Pretty weak. Now, is it just because you're trying to be a good objectivist and not align yourself with any political movement that's not 100% perfect and pure? Is that what's going on here?
who should be infuriated as citizens. They should vote. They should vote the people who are apt. They should vote their politicians out of power because they're not doing the one basic thing the politicians have to do, which is protect them. They're letting these marches go on and on and on with no end. Their only purpose is violence. The only purpose is provocation.
Yeah.
And that needs.
The only purpose of letting these things happen is provocation and violence. That's true. That's absolutely true. Now, who's the good guy here and who's the bad guy here?
To be stopped, but it's not a reason for the federal government to enter unless you've really got civil war. Any more than it's a reason for the federal government to enter because you've got all these shootings in Chicago, which are much worse.
Yeah, at what point does the federal government come in? I think first the federal government charges somebody locally, like a mayor or the police chief or something like that, charges them with a crime, arrests them and prosecutes them, and then so that whoever steps into position is now going to get this in control, or they're also going to face arrest and prosecution. I think we have laws on the books about enforcing laws. I think we have something that we can do. I think the federal government could do something about derogation of office, dereliction of office, something like that. So charges need to be brought, in lieu of injury and death, which has happened. And I think that that's the path we would go. After you go down that path, if you can't get it under control, then you're going to have to send in the federal troops eventually, but it's going to have to get a lot uglier than it is right now, that's for sure. Like he said, Chicago, more people get hurt and die in Chicago than in downtown Portland. But that strikes me a little bit as the attitude that the Europeans had about terrorism. They said terrorism's not a problem in Europe. One terrorist attack every 10 years. Ooh, America's got the real terrorist problem with the 9/11 attacks, right? Now, boy, all those people have shut the hell up nowadays, haven't they? So, Yaron, do you really want to see it get there with Antifa? I mean, let's be honest about who the good people are and who the bad people are. One side's not as bad as the other. One side's trying to defend good, and the other side's attacking what's good, and they're not equal. They are not equal. That is plain as the nose on your face to an honest person.
Many more people are getting killed in Chicago than are in Portland. If you don't want to be exposed to the mess that is in Portland, don't go to the park where they're fighting.
It's not a park.
There's a gang fight every Saturday in this park in Portland. Don't go there. Now, I think it's
They take over the downtown area and block all the roads. It's not a park.
disgusting that that's allowed to happen, but folk, 99.9% of the people who have any sense, who have half a brain, they know how to avoid it. Just stay away.
I wonder if I can
All
help you
right.
to.
Then he cuts to those. So we're done. There we are, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know exactly how much disagreement there is between Yaron and I, but to the extent that he buys into all the garbage that comes on CNN, and just thinks that these people are some sort of white nationalists, does he think that the people who fought the Second World War were just a bunch of white nationalists? So fuck them. I mean, what is this attitude? I just don't get it.